Hiya. So anyone who saw one of my recent videos about how we artificially attempt to raise the horse's head into an unnatural position, today I'm going to look at the other side of that, which is something called Rollkur. Now, Rollkur is the act of forcing the horse's head so far behind the vertical that its chin is against its chest in many cases. The human seems to have had an obsession with the horse's head carriage for time immemorial. And in certain disciplines like dressage, it's always the ideal head position that is referred to. But if it's so ideal, then why do we have to force it so much? So I want to keep this as easy to understand as possible so that everybody, those just starting out with horses, even laymen who just bet on them once a year, can understand what I'm saying. But these diagrams illustrate the right and wrong head carriages of the horse. There's a lot of literature out there about the real damage that goes on to the cervical spine, the cranium, etc., etc. But I want to keep this accessible, as I say. So do feel free to research this a little bit more. I'm going to show you some examples today of Rollkur and the detrimental effects. Now, this first horse is not in Rollkur, but that's why I've included it. This horse is not in a correct willing outline. You can see its jaw is tucking back into its neck, into its throat, I should say. The muscles on the underside are doing the pushing, if you like. The jaw is open, but the horse's nose is still relatively on the vertical. So although it's not a correct, willing, soft outline, I don't want you to mistake it for what I'm about to show you, which is actually Rollkur, which is the excessive hyperflexion of the horse's neck. Now, although this is illegal in most disciplines, it still goes on today. Now, this is Rollkur. You'll see by the rider's upright position, it's more than just an upright classical seat. It's almost a full body brace. If you see the backward pull on long reins, you'll see that there is a lot of weight being winched into that horse's curb bit in order to achieve this artificial Rollkur position. The horse can't function like this. It will function because it has no other options. All options have now been shut off, but it will not flourish and it will not do well. And there is a psychological damage aspect as well as a physical, I believe. Now you see very clearly on this grey horse how shut down the throat part of that is. So this horse can no longer breathe properly, particularly with action of the tongue going on inside the mouth. You'll see that it has no option but to almost be more extravagant with the front limbs, and that's actually to try and balance itself here. Again, we see this all the time, and yet it is something that is meant to be banned. Now, a lot of people believe that this is a way of stretching the muscles, but you don't stretch muscles into an artificial shape, not and expect them to stay sound. Now, this is an upsetting image. I've seen similar things like this over the course of my years in showing yards, dressage yards. They've used tight grass reins, they've done rope like this horse has got here. The belief being that if you hold the muscles in a certain position, then that's how the muscles will stay. I don't know anyone who goes to a gym and does that, just to put that out there. But the damage this is doing is way more than just physical. Aside from the fact that the tongue is going to be lacerated, bruised, damaged, the lower jaw too will have arthritic changes. This diagram here shows a bit more X-ray version, if you like, of what's going on. And you'll see where the bit is levering on that very thin part of the lower jaw. And I refer you to my video about bars of the mouth to give you a closer look as to what those bits are acting on and why they work with the leverage. This is a problem for the horse in so many ways, because like I say, all the emergency exits are shut off to them. They can't open their mouth anymore because the jaw, the lower jaw, has nowhere it can go. If you look here, the big jaw muscle, the mandible there, or the cheek, as a lot of people would refer to it. But if you see where that actually finishes up in the throat, that jaw can't come back physically anymore. It can't. That horse cannot open its mouth anymore to try and effect a release from this. And to add to that, it's got a drop part of a noseband on to try and stop it opening its mouth even more. I don't understand why this was ever going to be considered acceptable. And indeed, the way that the horse's nose is so far behind the vertical, you really don't have to be an equine physio or a vet to see the duress that the animal is under. If you close down the airway in such a manner, the horse is effectively having to work almost with a mask on, if that can give you an understanding. It can't get the air. Because it can't get the air, you're going to get an awful lot of tension. But this is subdued tension because the horse has no other way of exhibiting it. When the horse can't get enough oxygen, the muscles aren't getting enough oxygen. The blood can't pump round to fuel those huge muscles that the horse needs in order to try and perform the movements that's being asked of it. You see here the patchy sweat on the neck, very common sight. You see the veins protruding. That's because the animal is struggling to get what it needs in order to work. You'll see here that the mouth is open. There is still quite a bit of tension on those reins, which should not be happening if the horse is flexed. If the horse is flexed, leave the rein alone. But as you see, this is about coercion and force, and the pain inflicted and the damage inflicted means that we now have vets outside top dressage competitions checking for blue tongue where the blood has been cut off and bleeding mouths. And while the welfare of the horse should always be paramount, and I'm glad that those people are there, it's a sad indictment that they have to be there at all. We should not have horses leaving any discipline with injuries from the equipment that we have used. If you see this horse is being pushed into more of a pace here, again you see the middle of the neck is the highest point, not the pole. The airway is shut down. The horse can no longer see properly. Bear in mind they can't see right in front of them because of their eye positioning. They can't balance themselves despite the fact they've now got a rider on their back as well, so that means they've got to have more control of their body. When we hold a horse in this position, considering it to look pretty or attractive, we are training not only newcomers to riding and to the sport, we're also telling those people who watch out of pleasure or intrigue but have nothing to do with horses, that this is an acceptable thing that we do. And yet, those very same people could well be out petitioning to stop animals being in circuses. I find it ironic that if we call something a sport, we will suddenly overlook so many of the things that are wrong about it, and where animals are concerned, I don't think we should anymore. So, if we see these horses being worked like this, even if it's backstage, there's also the theory, again, the muscle memory kind of belief, that if you work the horse very round and deep, and this is an excessive roundness and deepness, then when it goes into the arena, it will be so relieved to just be overbent that it will stay there. But again, if we're seeking the horse in natural self-carriage, then why are we having to inflict this in the first place? We all need to ask ourselves, when sport stops being sport, if only one of the partners is having a good time. Anyway, I thought I'd end on a little cartoon, just to raise a bit of humour, because that was quite a serious one. So, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I know that there was a few upsetting images in there. I make no apology for that. I want to help horses, and the only way we can help is by talking about it. Anyway, I hope you like and subscribe, and I hope you'll join me again very soon. Bye now.